Guides for games. Did anyone in the chat ever play the old LucasArts games? The kind of find the item, broken sword style one, you know, Secret on Monkey Island? Because those games had literal phone numbers on the back that you would have to call up in order to get hints.
I do remember that.
Those games were designed to be difficult, to make you phone the helpline. I mean, even the old Nintendo games, like N64 cartridges, had like, you know, call the Nintendo hotline, or whatever it was. They wanted you to call. And Prima used to sell guides, man. I mean, I've probably got some guidebooks for games around here before.
I've got some up in the loft. I found them earlier this year. I definitely had. Do you know what I found, actually?
What'd you find?
Do you remember the official original RuneScape handbook?
No. You've got one. They are...
I have got... It's in absolute tatters because I stole it from my school library.
Dude, they are rare. That's a piece of history right there.
Yeah.
Just going off on a tangent to RuneScape, I've been chatting to a couple of the guys from Jagex recently. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to tell you, but I'm going to do it anyway. What are they going to do? And we were talking about quests in general. I'm of the opinion that players can get kind of epic quest burnout. Once you've saved the world once, you kind of don't want to save it immediately again and immediately again and immediately again. Because unless you're actually connected to the world, you don't feel any real reason to save it.
You just want the reward.
Yeah. But what are the quests that actually make you feel connected to the world? Because to me, in RuneScape, one of the first quests everyone does is Cook's Assistant.
Yeah.
And then you're helping Zanuck, the goblin from the Dorgashoon.
Yeah.
To save diplomatic relations.
Imp
catcher, man. Just beads everywhere. Yeah, it's not epic.
It's everywhere.
It's not global. It's not massive. The Falador White Knight storyline, where you had to...
Black Knight's Castle as well.
Yeah, drop a cabbage. Drop a cabbage
into a cauldron. Sorted.
Do you think that MMORPGs, not RuneScape specifically, but MMOs in general, have power crept danger level of their quests in order... It's almost like they're adding in fake tension, because once you've got to the, you know, save the world level of tension, it's very difficult to care about anything else.
And that's kind of a flaw of bad game design or bad story design, because if you can't make people feel something about a world they're in, no matter how small the feeling is about that thing, they don't care about the world. And then in response, the developers will go, right, they want something more epic. And yeah, sure, it's fun. Like, look at RuneScape 3 now, just because it's an example we brought up. Every boss that gets released is... We've gone from, like, God Wars, the greater God Wars 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, and now you're just straight up fighting Zamorak himself. They've just announced that.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
You know, you and me have the same answer to this. Who's the greatest villain in media?
Who's the greatest villain in media?
TV show or film?
Gus Fring. Gus Fring. Is that what you were going to say?
Gus Fring, man. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad in the chat, Gus Fring. That guy scares me. Like, legit scares me. Or Umbridge in Harry Potter.
I haven't watched all the Harry Potters.
You don't need
I found out the other day that I don't know anything about them.
You're not missing much, to be honest, mate. But the idea is, you're never going to meet someone like Voldemort. You're never going to meet someone like Darth Vader. They're scary people, but you're never going to meet them. You will absolutely meet people like Umbridge. And she's this sadistic headmistress. You will, in your life, meet people like Gus Fring.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it terrifying. You don't need to have the epic scale world-ending threat. You just need to have a threat that is legitimately scary to the protagonist or to you.
Yeah, RuneScape have gone about this the wrong way, because you should never have to make a villain that's bigger and badder than the last. You've got a vast open world. Have small problems, all of the same threat, in different areas that are completely different.
Yep, you get it. I want to be an adventurer going on an adventure, doing heroic things for people who I care about, not just saving the world for nameless legions.
Yeah.
Instead of letting me save millions of people, let me save one person that I know about. Let me save one person that I care about.
And I've got a good example here. What's the one in RuneScape? Eagle Peak, is it? Where you You're
There's
dressing up as an eagle to
Yeah.
try and save the big
Yeah.
eagle that everyone was trying to hunt.
yeah, the hunter dude. Yeah.
That made you care about preserving their like nature and wildlife facility that they've built up, right? It made sense as to what you were doing and why you were doing it.
Yeah.
And it was a really like wholesome quest that stuck with me, despite the fact it was a bit poorly designed technically.
Yeah.
I didn't give two craps about while Gothic sleeps.
Yeah. No.
They
It was
just
epic
kept pushing it in
scale.
your face and be like, you should care about this because big guy, awesome guy, God. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just want the reward and I want to get out of here.
I think everyone in the chat and will agree, and I think hopefully you're going to say the right name, the name that I agree with this.
Okay.
Who was the best villain in World of Warcraft? The villain that we cared about the most?
Arthas.
Yeah. Why?
Because he had an extensive backstory. It was a tragedy story that was built up without the intent of ever being that, or at least, you know, from the story perspective.
Yep.
And you cared about the person that you now had to hunt down and kill.
Okay, you know what? Someone in the chat has just put Hogger, and you know what? Okay, Hogger,
Yeah.
if you play World of Warcraft, or if you play Classic, or if you were playing Black when it was vanilla, Hogger was a frickin' it was a hog. Just in the opening areas, in the low-level areas, was just a difficult pig to kill. Why do we care more? Why does Hogger have a greater legacy than the Jailer? You say
I'll tell you exactly why.
Go on, Cal.
Because we weren't made to care about it. We had reasons that we'd found ourselves to care about him as a character.
Yeah.
And he barely had any backstory. You kind of gathered the bits of lore that you could about him, and that made you care about him. It wasn't like, you should care about him, he's a pig. It makes no sense.
It was a very simple quest. Kill Hogger. You tried, you failed. And then you got a group, you tried, you probably failed again. And you thought, hang on, this isn't threatening the world, it's threatening my world. That's what it is. It's not the world, nameless, it's not disconnected from you. You could look at that pig whenever you wanted and be like, you are ruining my day.
Yeah.
Therefore, you are now my villain. Not the villain for the entire... It's personal. That's what it is. Do you think MMORPGs, quests have lost that personal touch that make you as an adventurer want to bother going to do anything?
I think you could be right with that. I do.
I want to be personal, man.
They've strayed away from what actually made quests fun.
I mean, quests...
I don't know, it's a tough one, isn't it? But I think you're right.
Because quests to be fun, you needed the narrative reason to go and do it, but people quest for different reasons. People quest for narrative reasons, people quest for boredom reasons, some people spacebar through it, some people just quest for the rewards. I mean, if you told someone, hey, you're going to get no reward for this quest apart from the adventure itself, a lot of people wouldn't want to do that at all.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good benchmark for designing a quest. Don't think about the rewards until the end, and really make it something that you'd want to do, because it's interesting and it's fun. I mean, there's quests in RuneScape that, even when I'm trying to play super efficiently, there's the odd quest, and I'm not a big quester in RuneScape just because nowadays you need the guides, right? You don't have the time to mess about and try and figure out that you've got to use a trout on a tree and whatever. And there are a few quests that I will go out of my way to do just because I love them. And then I'm like, oh, there's a reward for that. It's shit, but, you know.
But it was fun.
But it was fun.
People are talking about how New World, the quests were relatively soulless because you just had to run through the world. This idea of running through the world, of you have to have high levels to run through the world, what MMORPG games can you explore without feeling the need to level up? Because leveling up should be a fun thing to do, but it shouldn't be the only thing to do. To me, I mean, Guild Wars 2 was quite good to run through without needing to level up, because you leveled up as you went. Elder Scrolls Online allows you to run around without needing to level up. Even Final Fantasy XIV.
RuneScape to an extent. I'd say RuneScape to an extent does that as well.
Definitely.
They don't leave a trail of breadcrumbs where at each breadcrumb it's like, oh, sorry, come back later, you've got to do this.
Yeah.
You find these things by yourself.
Yeah.
And you're never at a point at any level where you can't find something to do. And if you are, you're really not far away from the next thing that you can do.
Yeah, you'll find something. Someone in chat said, I remember the One Small Favour quest more than the Save the World quest.
And all you got was a goddamn keyring and 2 lamps. That's how well I remember it.
Yeah, and someone, it's literally a load of NPCs asking you for a small favour, and you getting just slowly more annoyed. The fact that the favour is more and more complicated as it goes on.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's memorable.
That's all it is. Right.
And
So,
I think the quest design for that is an issue, for modern MMOs. Because as much as Ashes of Creation looks beautiful, they are ex-WoW devs, ex-WoW Quest devs.
Yeah.
And that really shines through in their quests. They are just, kill 10 bears.
Yeah.
Bring me a mushroom. It's just over there, but I'm not going to go pick it up.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But
I mean,
yeah, back to the topic of this, I guess, which is...
We can actually loop this back round.
Yeah.
Quests that are fun to do might not necessarily need guides to do. Is there... Because I find this personally. If I'm playing a quest in a game, I actually don't want to have a Wikipedia page open. I don't want to use a quest guide. There is a lovely kind of layer, a lovely skill in designing a quest that is complicated enough that you do need to think about it, but not frustrating enough that you can't solve it without outside help.
I think guides have taken away a big element of community in games. And again, RuneScape I'll use as an example because I know many people have played it. Do you remember way back when RuneScape came out and they'd got quests where there were logical things that a lot of people just wouldn't happen upon? It would take some thought to be like, maybe if I did this, that would work, right? And you'd have people that you see with like an epic shield and you'd just be like, whoa, where did you get that from? And they're like, from this quest. And you'd be like, well, I've been trying to do this for 2 weeks. Like, can you help me? And they'll either help you or just be like, lol, no, noob. And, you know, someone else will help you. But it drove this sense of community in the game. Now, that sense of community is still there on the wikis, right? Everyone's fumbling together to make it happen, but you're not interacting with that person anymore. To you, it's not even a person. You're reading a web page. People forget that people write those wikis. So we've removed the step that gave community meaning, and there is no way around that, unfortunately.
And there's a real irony here. Suffering, especially collective suffering, as in suffering through the process and the tedium of the quest, of learning, is a great bonding experience. As people, you know, go through hardships together, they bond with those people. You put any people into a difficult situation, they come out of it more connected. They come out brothers in arms style thing. Old MMORPG games didn't have the resources to give everyone the answers. So suffering through the process was almost a part of the game itself. It wasn't necessarily enjoyable at the time, but the reward was emotionally powerful. It was a powerful emotional bond.
Yeah.
You've got so many games now that are so easy with everything that immediately give it to the player that as soon as someone starts suffering, they leave.
This ties in well to something that was just said in my chat. I only have fun at max level in an MMO. Is that a problem with me or the game? And that ties in really well to what you were just saying about just things being handed to you. The fun of the game is no longer the process. The process is now, of leveling, is a time gate to the end of the game. Because that's where they can really balance stuff. Or that's how they feel they can balance stuff. So I'd say it's not a problem with you. It is definitely a problem with the game. Because it's this conflict of efficiency in your head. If you could do something and it would take you 50 hours to do at level 50 in WoW, but it would take you 6 hours to do at level 60, and getting to level 60 would take 3 hours, you're obviously going to get to level 60 and do it. And the game leads you down that path. They know they're doing it.
It's dangerous because the struggle against adversity is not fun or enjoyable in the moment, but does create some of the most powerful and lasting fun memories. I mean, nobody, if you go camping, nobody wants it to start chucking it down with rain while they're setting the tent up. Nobody wants the mud to start sliding around underneath you. Nobody wants to misplace their clothes and have to walk home in their underwear.
Yeah.
But a couple of weeks later, or months later, or years later, that's the exact stuff you're laughing about. I mean, they say that comedy is just tragedy plus time. Nobody wants to suffer in the moment, but those moments of suffering end up being some of the most memorable experiences, provided they aren't, you know, terribly abusive moments of suffering. Yeah, we're talking about like insignificant moments of suffering here. We're talking about slight annoyances, not necessarily life-changing, terrible, negative experiences. So when people say, oh, I wish MMORPGs needed a community again, what you're actually saying is you wish the player base had those memories of suffering together.
You have hit a nail on the head. Because we were talking, me and one of the developers of Nightmare World were talking about this yesterday. And we want this whole thing of like emergent gameplay, things that you don't plan but happen. And at the time, they may not seem great, but you'll look back at them and it becomes epic. And I have the perfect example for you. Falador Massacre.
Yep.
At the time, tragedy. People lost loads of stuff. It was a disaster. It was a programming oversight and shouldn't have happened.
Yep.
It's now become like a national holiday in RuneScape.
It's legend. It's myth, isn't it?
It's legend, yeah.
It is myth. I mean, you look to see the curse of corrupted blood in World of Warcraft.
Exactly. That was the other example that was brought up. Yeah. The corrupted blood, well, they called it the Black Plague of WoW, didn't they? Again, an oversight, shouldn't have happened. Super annoying for everyone at the time, but they all look back on it as a moment that was just so epic. It's history. It's part of the game now. I think they actually built it into the lore to explain how it broke out.
I've started watching a load
of
videos by a YouTuber called Many Kudos. I don't know if you've seen Many Kudos before. Phenomenally talented YouTuber. Would definitely recommend.
The name rings a bell.
Oh, he's got all these small-scale problems with stuff. He's really clever. And he went through the World of Warcraft issues, and one of them was the rogue on the bridge in World of Warcraft Classic.
I remember that.
Angie would just sit there for like 8 hours a day ganking players.
Yeah.
Until the battlegrounds came along and you actually got more points for going to there. But he would do that. And it became a thing. People on the forums would write guides for how to avoid a human player.
Yeah.
Because he was part of the mythos. It's this super annoying paradox. The more convenient you make your game, the more people will play it.
Yeah.
But the fewer people will create lasting memories of camaraderie within it. Yeah. It's this really horrible paradox. And I used to be, years ago, I was very much of the mindset, make the game difficult. Make it, force people to work together. And then people explain why that was wrong. And then I became too much the opposite. And I was like, make the game easy. Everyone should be able to do everything all the time. And now I'm realizing that both sides have valid uses in game design. You do want the game to be accessible to as many people as possible, but you also want to invite collective suffering to create meaningful memories.
Yeah. Arcade, I remember vividly that there was a single port that had PvP enabled, and this was a port that you'd bring your ship into and unload your goods often. And this clan of about 6 people formed on our server who basically had it on lockdown. They'd have it on lockdown and they'd just murder everyone who came into the port. And everyone's like, well, this isn't fun because you're bringing a trade ship, not a battleship, so you can never beat them. And what happened is a little guild on our server formed, which was the Port Protection Unit. And what you'd do is you'd all make sure you had a mailbox on your ship, and you'd send mail when you were about 30 minutes out from the port with the payment to that guild, and they'd be there on the dock, and they'd have it locked down for you.
Brilliant.
And this created player interaction that wasn't intended, moments that you'll remember forever. Like if, let's say you pay them the port protection, and then it becomes a trial in the in-game court because they didn't protect you, and you've took them to court. Like, it created stories and legends that were told for the next few years through that server.
I can think of 2 legends that have actually been created in the last couple of weeks. Elden Ring, let me solo her.
Yeah. Yeah.
If anyone in the chat is unaware, in Elden Ring, if you haven't played Elden Ring, book a week off work if you can and try and play it. It's phenomenally good. Let me solo her. There's a boss. Is it Melania? Blade of Mikola? I think it's Melania. It's someone in the chat will correct me.
The name sounds familiar. It's probably that, yeah.
She's an incredibly difficult boss. She's very hard to kill. Let me solo her was a guy that just wore a pot on his head, had 2 katanas. Had the Rivers of Blood and the Uchi katana, and you would summon Let me solo her, and he would just solo her. That's what he would do. But it's a modern-day mythos. He has created legend, and we have suffered trying to kill Melania. He's come along and fixed it. We now all collectively exist under the banner, under the almost religion of Let Me Solo Her by now.
Yeah.
But then people have said, is Diablo Immortal creating this shared suffering? No, but Quinn69 was. Did you see Quinn finally got his 5-star jam?
Yep, he deleted his account, didn't he, right after?
So, for anyone in the chat who's unaware, I was on a episode of Allcraft with Quinn. He was a lovely guy, lovely guy to talk to beforehand. He spent 25,000 New Zealand dollars, which is roughly 21,000 American US dollars, and that's about 12,500 Great British pounds. He got a 5-star gem, 12,500 GBP later. And as soon as he got it, he deleted his account. So he can't even get it back. He did it to prove it could be done, and then deleted it. What a power move. But
that's just flopping on the table,
yeah,
that is.
That's
what that is.
That's a modern day myth. We've all collectively suffered. So when people say, EverQuest used to be great, have you ever noticed this? EverQuest used to be great. Selling all of your items in the tunnel together. World of Warcraft used to be great. Speaking in zone chat to get a guild together. RuneScape. Trading in the Falador on the Varrock Bank. Everyone fondly remembers when they succeeded against a struggle.
Yeah, and that is what I was going to say. It's okay to make a certain system a struggle as long as you give the players the tools to overcome that struggle together. Yeah. Like that is the perfect example, the Falador Park trading. There was no Grand Exchange. People had been asking for something like the Grand Exchange because, other games had auction houses and whatever. And it never came. So players made their own auction house. That's what Falador Park was. It was an auction house. Yeah. You'd look around all the sellers, you'd get the highest bids and whatever. That was a problem that was overcame. And now that is gone, people are realizing that the fun's just not really there.
If someone struggles through something, one of the reasons they struggle through it is to make it easier for the people that come after them. People that write the wikis have gone through all of the possible combinations and given people guides. You take away, I talked about this in a video a few days ago. If you take away the struggle from other people, you're helping them get to the reward quicker, but you're potentially removing some of the kind of narrative... the sense of accomplishment, the narrative richness, the mechanical richness that reaching that reward was, because a reward is inversely proportional to the difficulty required to get it. Harder stuff makes you feel better when you finally achieve it. What are we doing now? What MMO design that is happening now that can you see, Cal, is taking away struggle that you don't think will actually work long term? Because what did New World do? How did New World remove struggle, which actually ended up creating a feeling of blandness, if you will? Character boosts, I think, is a big one. People are saying character boosts.
Character boosts, that's a pet peeve of mine.
But if the character boost is just boosting past boring gameplay anyway, is that just
gameplay interesting?
Exactly, I agree. Character boosts right now are just monetizing boredom. That's what it is. Like, hey, you can play the boring bit or just pay to skip it.
Create the problem, sell the solution.
Yeah, but you should. What does this is what I don't get. What does a character boost do? A character boost gets you to the part of the game that's fun.
Yeah.
Just let people do that. Like, if a level 1 character wants to take on the hardest boss in World of Warcraft, let them. Yeah. Kill them.
Yeah, let them.
Let them do it. Let them die.
It's kind of sad because now they are more incentivized to make gameplay boring up until the end because you're then incentivized. That is Blizzard saying, we know that our leveling is shit.
Yeah.
We know it, but you can bypass that. And they always put this argument out of, if you've done the story once, it's not fun to do it again. And I do agree with that.
Yep.
So why do they include with their new purchases of Shadowlands a boost up to the previous expansion's max level?
Dragon Realm put a really good point in there. Let them realise why the final boss is the final boss. If you have just, first of all, hit the level cap and you've got kind of decent gear, you've not been grinding for hours, you've got decent gear, and you go and take on a hard boss with a team and you win, yeah, that feels great. Chat, let me know this. How many people have you seen say they want a challenge? And how often have you seen those same people who want a challenge leave the moment they lose?
I've got a good example of that. An example that most people may be able to relate to. The Inferno in RuneScape. Everyone's like, oh, the fight caves are so easy. This is so easy. That's hard but requires 10 people that all need to be really good. I want a good challenge. Here's the Inferno. Those same people, and I know this from the clan that I was in, these very same people finally got the challenge that they wanted. Something they wouldn't one-shot. Something that would take learning, skill, and just time. They gave up after the second go.
Yeah.
Because they are so used to being able to just steamroll through everything that when they are actually given a challenge, they realise they don't want it.
And Steph has nailed it in the chat. People want to barely win. That's what people want. People don't want to come out of a fight, you know, shining still. You don't want to go in with shining armour and a sharp sword and come out 5 minutes later and be like, oh, I won. You also equally don't want to go in and be utterly smashed in the first couple of seconds. People want to leave the fight bloodied, battered, dripping with sweat, but able to hold their arm up in the air and be like, I won. That's the feeling people want. The problem is they want it first time.
They want it all the time.
Yeah.
They need to understand that a challenge is going to have failure. But what you need to make sure in game development is that the reward when you finally do succeed is better than all of the losses you've taken along the way to succeeding.
Or make failure fun. As silly as this sounds, make failure fun. I've been playing a lot of Path of Exile recently. Have you got into Path of Exile yet, Cal?
I have been working on a big video and I haven't had time, unfortunately.
Good. Don't start playing Path of Exile if you've got stuff to do. Because when I was playing through Path of Exile, when you kill enemies in a map, they stay dead. So when you die and run back through the map, you've always made progress. I don't mind losing. When I die in Path of Exile, I'm like, okay, next time I'm coming for you. I'm going to summon more minions, move out the way, do more of this. It was great. Losing was okay. Elden Ring and Dark Souls. You know why Elden Ring and Dark Souls are so bloody good? It's because losing doesn't feel bad. Losing feels like a learning experience. It's like a mistake that you made. Roguelike games where you die and have to start again. Making losing part of the experience, totally fine. Interesting way to do it.
World of Warcraft's mythic bosses had this sense of progression. If you're making a boss fight, and that is the challenge, that one boss, it needs to have multiple phases and kind of like milestones for the player. Anyone who's done any high-level raiding in WoW will be able to vouch for this. Every time you reach a new phase in a boss that you've been, you know, sticking at for the last couple of days, you feel amazing because that is like a visual indicator of I can overcome this. I have got further. Now we need to get through this phase. We need to learn this new bit of the phase. And by the time you've learned that, it's muscle memory for the entire first bit of the fight. That's the progress you're getting. You're getting the first bits down easier as you learn the new ones every single time. It's always progress unless you've got just a team of brainless chickens. People
have mentioned it's like the Human Plus project in Armored Core. The more you lose, the more you go for that. And then someone made a really interesting point that I want to come back to about this. It was about the repeated losing and the way it should be made to be fun. Let me just see if I can find the thing. Yeah, losing is fun as long as there's not too much repetition. Yes, it can't be repetitive. It needs to feel like losing was because of one or two mistakes that you made, not this is an impossible situation. If you lose and you think, I was so close, that's when people want to go back. And if you lose again and thinking, I was so close, that's when that's the knife edge you want to keep the players on.
Someone in my chat's just asked a really good question. It's always 3-phase bosses. Why? And as someone who's been recently planning out a boss fight, I can tell you exactly why 3, because I've gone with 3 as well.
So I would say 3 because of the dramatic impact of 3, of the story arc, the beginning, the middle, and the end. But that's coming at it from a theatre point of view. What's the developer reason?
It may accidentally do that. But the reason that I went with 3 for mine is you set a sort of time to kill boundary. How long do you want this fight to take? And normally it's probably between 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the boss. Now, you want each phase to last long enough that it's meaningful in the fight, that they can't just look out on a few of the moves in that phase. They have to actually learn that phase. They can't just stumble through it. You don't want there to be too many phases that it's overwhelming and people are now trying to remember 18 different moves across 12 different phases. That's not fun.
Fuck Zul'Ra, the way that's designed in RuneScape. I hate Zul'Ra. That stupid snake. That freaking fish.
That is a boss that's really hard to learn because the phases are in different orders, in different amounts. You can get the same phase multiple times. You cannot prepare yourself mentally for it. It's all just muscle reactions to the individual things, and it just takes so long.
I spent so long trying to learn Zul'Ra with the right numbers and the right switches and the right moves. Everyone told me what to do, and I thought, okay, you know what? No, new plan. I'm just going to go full ranged damage and burn him quicker than he burns me. I just took a full inventory of food, blowpipe, just ran in and just started shooting him, taking an absolute shed load of poison damage. I've only got to kill him once for the achievement diary, and I just did that. Vorkath, however, the dragon, pretty easy to remember because you've got a couple of phases, all visually different. You can prepare for them, and they're all dealt with in different ways. Vorkath fight, much more popular than the Zul'Ra fight.
Vorkath is one of the best designed fights, I'd say, in the whole of RuneScape. Now, is it difficult? Not really. You learn it after the first, 3 attempts. But if they made the difficulty higher, if they had more frequently hitting moves and less one-shot moves if you fail them, they could make a really cool fight out of that, I think.
And you know what? I think we just realised something. I was talking to a couple of people a few weeks ago about everything in an MMORPG is measured in time. Even money. Everything is measured in time. If you need, 10 gold coins in an MMO, the question is how much time does it take for you to gather those? If you need to gain a level, the question is how much time does it need to grind that experience? And we just talked about making losing fun. Losing should still be an okay experience. When you die in an MMO, let's say you do a dungeon and you die 20 minutes into the dungeon, what you've lost is that 20 minutes worth of time. That 20, you're not going to get it back because you've got to start back at the start. If you then also lose extra time, such as an experience debt or broken equipment, broken gold, provided gold isn't super easy to get and you haven't got thousands of it already, what you're doing is you're actually punishing the player not only by taking away the time they spent on the attempt, but by then adding a time debt that they need to repay back to get to the same level they were at from the start. That does not make losing feel good.
No, and WoW had this issue with armor repairs. In concept, armor repairs are just a smaller, bit of damage that your armor takes every time that you die. But then you have that final time sacrifice of now I've got to go and repair it when it's fully broken, and I also have to pay money, and my team have to wait for me, and they'll probably replace me, and then there's all these consequences that come in that are not necessarily fun, but they are there, and I guess the plus side of that is you're now incentivized to learn and not die as much, and that is the reward for not dying as much.
But should the incentive be you've lost the time that you already put into the dungeon, that's gone, try again? Because someone put in chat, and I agree with this, whenever RuneScape 3 or even old school RuneScape has a free death weekend where you can get your items and stuff back from death's coffers for free, because in RuneScape you die, your items go to death, you have to pay death to get your stuff back. When that's taken away, everyone goes bossing, and everyone, especially on Reddit, has a great time. Everyone said, I always wanted to do this boss. I always wanted to try this content, but I was so afraid of the punishment that I would get if I failed, I never did it.
I think there's a good balance to find there, and this is one thing that I think RuneScape did wrong. Now when you die, you are always punished. You always have to pay money to get your gear back because it is more time efficient, essentially, than running and getting your gear. In the past, when grave times weren't as long as they are now, there was a potential punishment. You could lose your gear, but that was always on you. It was always your fault. Unless a server went out or whatever, it was always your fault. And you had no one to blame but yourself.
Losing gear can work in games when gear is easily accessible again. Losing gear that has taken months, in some cases years, for you to get is sometimes such a blow that you would lose the player as well because they wouldn't want to deal with that. People think that I just hate full loot PvP games. I don't hate the game design idea. I hate the fact that once you have killed someone, you are often taking so much progress away from that person that their motivation to play again is often damaged. If EVE Online, if you blow up someone's ship who has spent, tens of thousands of dollars on it, that so many players, I've seen so many players say, I played a hardcore game for 4 or 5 months, got ganked by a hit squad, have no desire to play again because I spent so long building it up. That does not keep players.
No, and this is another discussion that we'd had, because our plan is, in our game, PvP will be full loot PvP. You kill someone, you get their stuff. They might keep 1 or 2 items, but, But for the most part, you will be able to pick up all their stuff. And some people in the team were like, well, that doesn't sound very fun. I would hate that. And then the debate back to that is, well, don't go into the PvP area at all, or don't go in with stuff you're not willing to lose. Like, the element of risk and reward has to be there. Otherwise, you've got these PvP areas that no one goes to. What's the point?
People say that the wilderness is dead on RuneScape. While I don't necessarily agree it's completely dead, there are a few hardcore PvP people out there, why aren't people going into it? Well, normally because they don't want to lose their stuff. What if the stuff was relatively easy to get back? What if it didn't take too long? Because again, it's a time question. When you die, and it always comes back to time. You die in the wilderness, you lose X amount of stuff. You're effectively saying, right, not only have I lost the time that I was hunting the player for, because that's not profitable anymore, I've now lost all of the time that was originally put into getting the stuff that I just lost.
That's true. But you always need to look at the flip side when it comes to this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. The other flip side of that scenario is you hunt down this other player, you kill them, and you gain a secondary set of armor that you've just spent months working towards. Mm-hmm. Your time input into that was astronomically worth it.
Yeah.
But that is the risk and reward. You know, and RuneScape has got this system that's really good. The safer you want to be, the less money you risk. But you also make it more difficult for yourself against players that are willing to risk stuff.
And people have said in the chat, what's the point of full loot PvP? I think, personally, the point of full loot PvP is to have a system in the game where players can achieve items quicker through killing other players than they would have achieved them through playing the game. It's effectively a time-saving mechanic if we come back to time again. The reason that you want to be able to kill someone that has more stuff than you is because you want their stuff, but you don't want to put the time in. You want the skill of killing them to be equivalent to the time of going to grind whatever it is. That's
it's
what
essentially gambling with skill. You are both putting up the stake of your entire armor that you've got equipped, but there is an element of skill there. I think that's okay, and I really think that Jagex should lean into PvP more. And I mean, the reason that they're not is a whole nother topic of polling and player-based distribution between PvE and PvM, all of that. But if they really leaned back into PvP again, they could revive the wilderness quite easily. It would still have to be full loot PvP.
Do you believe that PvP works in long-term MMORPGs because people put long-term worth of time into them when it's much more popular in short, intense bursts?
Yeah, I think the fact that such a short scenario can have such a big outcome of time is exciting to a lot of people. And if it's not exciting to them, it's nerve-wracking. If they need to go and do the major arena quest and they don't like PvP, well, their reward for going into that PvP zone is the mage cape. Do they have to get it? No. Are they going to really want it? Yes. And if they want it enough, they can go and get it. And one of the things that I was really hoping would revive the wilderness in RuneScape was when they'd added the bloodwood trees. Because when it was originally polled, the bloodwood trees were only going to be in the wilderness. But then people cried and whined that they didn't want to go into the wilderness to be able to get this thing, that if they really wanted, they could go and do safe PvM and then buy them off other players. That's the point, right? It gives PvPers a new money-making method. Well, because people cried and whined, there was then a bloodwood tree outside of the wilderness and another one somewhere else outside of the wilderness. So people just made alts and never had to go in the wilderness. So they put something really cool in place and then gave players the tools to circumvent the entire game design.
I think I remember, but consider this. You've got the cycle of commerce and the cycle of creation, killing, trade, barter, everything that makes kind of the marketplace flow in a big circle. You've got the people that create, the people that consume, the people that are the tertiary ingredients, all in a big circle. This circle is outside of PvP. This is just a circle that exists within PvE outside of the wilderness and RuneScape. And then you've got a circle that exists purely for PvP. People that do PvP, people that are killed, people that win. This is the PvP circle. And these two circles very rarely interact. People that want to do PvE, stay here. People that want to do PvP, stay here. And people say one of these circles is dead. What we need to do, what it's difficult to do, is find a way to have the circles overlap so you get the benefits from one into the other without forcing.
It's like it's a load balancing technique. If one economy goes down, it's not as impacted because it's connected to a secondary economy. They're always balancing each other out.
I saw it in RuneScape. I think it was, you need to have a law rune and 5 air runes to do telegrab. Because originally there were nature runes in the wilderness on a little island and you had to telegrab them. So one of the only way to get fast nature runes was to run into the wilderness with a load of law runes and an air staff and telegrab them and then go and sell those nature runes to somebody else. It was that was a way that you brought in the wilderness kind of cycle, the loop, to the outer wilderness,
outside world,
loop. So you don't want to force players to PvP because you don't want to force people to do content they don't want to do, but you do want to find a way to overlap those two kind of marketplaces, if you will, those two major demographics.
In fact, we've got Jagex Shogun in chat, so this is a perfect example.
Oh, awesome. How's Shogun doing?
I'm sure he's doing well listening to us complain about RuneScape. He says, people go to train divination in the wilderness, they get killed by a PKer, they then call the PKer horrible things because the PKer is killing their time investment. And
don't train divination in the wilderness.
Exactly. Now, there could be different ways to deal with this. Let's say it's a resource that is only gatherable in the wilderness. Give them a higher yield in the wilderness, so that if they are good and skilled enough to avoid PKers, they're getting way more per hour.
Risk versus reward.
And they will eventually, at some point, have that balanced out when they are killed.
And here's what, again, irritates me, and this is a totally different discussion. Someone will say, oh, but we should just hire a guild to protect us. You know, hire like 4 or 5 guys to run around and protect you. And in theory, that sounds great. In practice, when there were only a few popular MMORPGs, when you only really had EverQuest, Ultima Online, Dark Age of Camelot, that kind of stuff, you had a lot of people providing these services. There are so many MMORPGs now that the player base is spread so thin across all of them. Even the super successful games don't have the millions upon millions upon millions of active players at any one time that people like to wax poetical about. So I like the idea that people say, oh, this is a player-made problem, we should have a player-made solution. There aren't always enough players on to or willing to help you with that want to be that solution.
Look at RuneScape again with the Revenant Caves. What was happening there? PKing was annoying people because if you didn't get PK'd, gold per hour was astronomical. You could get like millions and millions more than you could anywhere else in the game for minimal effort, unless you got killed. So then the natural solution was some big brain player created a clan called a protection clan, where you now are not allowed into that area of the game unless you pay for their protection. Like, you know, you've got one clan across every PvP world gatekeeping an area of content unless you pay them.
But is that going back to the idea of emergent content and stories that we were talking about earlier?
It is, but the solution's easy, right? Get a big enough clan to combat them. Make a clan that allows everybody to go there, and they all protect each other from anyone who attacks them. But to do that is going to take so much effort and time and coordination that it's not even worth it.
Yeah, someone effectively, as people in chat are saying, made the mafia in RuneScape. The Revenant Caves,
that's exactly what it is.
The Revenant Caves was a very lucrative place in the wilderness to kill revenants, and you could get about 7 million gold an hour by doing this. So you would say to a clan, hey, I'll pay you 3 million an hour to make sure no one kills me. That clan would make sure no one kills you. So an area that was actually designed to be dangerous, ganking, fighting for your life, kind of thinking all the time, was actually, hey, here's my protection money, keep me alive.
Yeah. And it's not even an option now, because you might think, well, you can pay for protection or you can risk it and go alone. Well, if you risk it and go alone and you're not in this paid protection mafia, you just get straight up slaughtered.
Yeah.
So it's not an option now. It's pay or don't play.
But we were talking earlier about the idea that overcoming struggles was what created these stories. And people, and this is why game design isn't just straightforward, because if game design was easy and straightforward, there would just be a manual that everyone follows and you make the best game every time. What we have is a struggle to get to the wilderness caves. What we now have is a story that we are telling people and people are enjoying. And it's the wilderness caves. It's a crazy Revenant Cave story. Do we take away that struggle and thus stop the story? Do we keep the struggle and effectively ruin people's experience of those caves?
I think this ties back into what we originally said of if there is a struggle that's going to occur, you need to give players the adequate tools to overcome that struggle as a group. And I think in this case, the kind of like wilderness protection thing has gotten so big. And by the way, bear this in mind. The option now is to do all that I said, create a huge clan that doesn't take all this money and, you know, slay everybody else, or just join the clan and be a paid protector, and you'll now make more money than the actual thing that people are paying to make money off.
Yeah, I mean,
so
a lot
it's
of people
self-perpetuating problem that doesn't really have the tools to solve it.
People are pointing out that the Revenant Caves led to a lot of real-world trading things. You had a lot of people farming.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, people discovered this was one of the fastest ways to make money in the game, so they did that and then sold that gold on.
Yeah.
Whenever a games company is thinking up a solution to a problem in their game, can they ignore the potential real-life implications of that solution? Because someone once said, you can't unknow something. If you, as a game designer, know that putting in XYZ system will be fun for players, but it will also vastly increase a certain level of cheating, should you do it? Can you make decisions based on what people are doing outside of the game in your game?
I think if the things they're doing outside of the game is impacting things inside of the game, such as cheating and real-world trading, it then comes down to a balance. You now need to think, okay, this is a really fun system. It is going to introduce this problem, but can we fix that problem in a separate swoop, right? Whether that be an update to botting, how you detect them, whether it be, you know, taking the real-world, the gold sites to court, which, again, is an issue that really can't be solved, because as soon as you take one down, it's popped up in another location. It's like a torrent site at this point.
Because I was saying to someone about Diablo Immortal that if you just made it possible for a free player to earn eternal orbs, the premium paid currency, you would actually knock down a lot of roadblocks. You wouldn't fix the game, but the main kind of bottleneck...
It's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, the main bottleneck is earning of eternal orbs. If there was no daily limit and a player could just grind to earn those, potential. But then someone straight away said to me, yeah, but what about bots? And you know what? They're right. My solution doesn't take into account bots. My solution would definitely encourage bots. But can you step away from a solution that would be fun for the players because it would then bring in bots? I mean, Lost Ark had a massive bot purge recently and had hundreds of thousands of bot characters. So clearly Lost Ark is allowing some system that encourages bots, but it's also encouraging players.
And there's a really good way to kind of solve this as a whole. The high gold earning things in game are usually boring things that nobody wants to do, and they make money because they're boring, right? If you make a system that is fun, like undeniably fun, so many people will play that the value from it will drop to the point that it's not as worth botting. Everything will always be worth botting, right? But that's solving two problems. The players are having a lot of fun, which means they're not bothered about the lower earnings from it, which also mean bots aren't as bothered about the game because it's lower earnings from that mini game or that system. But then you've made a system that is now more fun than your last. That's now become boring, and that's now the problem that wasn't a problem for 6 years prior. It's
almost like this pendulum swinging backward and forth. You've got so many bots, so you get rid of them, but then you've not got enough bots, so the players actually don't want to do the boring stuff in your game to get it, so you let some back in and it works. It's
like, have you ever seen those sets of scales where it's just like a 10-pointed scale and you can balance things on them, and you've got to balance it perfectly on every side? You move a grain of rice from one of those to another, the entire thing's just going to be like a planetarium. It's very hard.
No, you're spot on. I discuss something, or I'll make a YouTube video on something, and there'll be a YouTube comment, or there'll be someone messaging me on Discord saying, well, actually, your solution doesn't think of this, 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 and this. And I have to reply to as many as I can going, you are spot on. Because game design is an endless cycle of working out where we go from this to that to this to that to this to that to this to that.
Yeah.
If there were one answer for every solution, we might have found it.
Yeah.
And it would make the whole process less fun.
There is no answer to everything. You have to. This is where you have to get really creative with solutions to problems. One of the ones that we recently discussed is to help balance out the kind of value and never have one thing just be the ultimate meta for just kill shitloads of these and you'll make the most money. We wanted that if something is being aggressively farmed, the server, throttles the spawn rate of those or throttles the loot limits from those. And it encourages people to surf around through different methods, not necessarily like every 10 minutes. Maybe if something has been farmed hard for 8 hours on this one server or over all servers, the pickpockets have got no money left. You're going to have to go kill pigs for a bit or kill something else. But they've not been killed in a while. So you kind of... And this enforcement doesn't have to be hard. It could be a 20% drop in the amount of drops that you get.
I suppose we're also pushing toward Final Fantasy XIV territory with their fate system, which is where you travel around the FF14 map and this fate now gives more experience, this fate now gives more money, this now does more of this. I'm sure there was one in I think it was in either Diablo Immortal. You had daily, this dungeon is now giving double this dungeon. Neverwinter had it in every hour. The highlighted dungeon would change, and that highlighted dungeon had one extra drop added to it. It wasn't massive, but it was important enough for people to go to, right, yeah, sweet, let's do
Mythic
this.
Mythic Plus. They knew that if they released Mythic Plus, where you could go to any dungeon, you'd find the quickest dungeon with the least amount of mobs and the best rewards, and there would be a meta dungeon. You would always do that dungeon. Why would you do any other?
Yeah.
But with the Mythic Plus key system, where every week you get one key, and you can do your key or your friends, you have to go from different things. And you never really feel bad about it. Sure, you'd get something like, oh god, what was it called? The original Mythic Plus, the one on the boat. You know the one I'm on about. I'm sure you do. There was a boat dungeon.
Which expansion was it in? More of Souls, people are saying.
More of Souls, that's the one. More of Souls was the dungeon. If someone had a key for More of Souls, you're their new best friend. Because it's a short dungeon, lots of mobs that you can AoE down quickly, and you'd finish it in about, 6 minutes sometimes. Whenever you did have, 6 people in your guild that had More of Souls keys, you were like, right, lads, get together, we're blasting through all of these back to back. And it felt like a reward rather than a limitation. Now, if you'd got another dungeon, it felt pretty shit, but you knew that you'd have to do it once, and then you could do something else.
And it's about this feeling of, if I do this content, I'll get rewarded. If I do this content, I'll get rewarded. I'll get rewarded. It's about finding this reward. But again, this can cycle back round to struggles. Because if you tell everyone in the player base, hey, this dungeon for the next 10 minutes is dropping double loot, but it's now harder. You have removed the struggle of finding a group, because you've probably got a group finder, but you've added in the struggle of actually doing the dungeon. And you know what? I think this is great because friction and struggle is one of the greatest ways to come up with entertaining ideas and solutions and awesome memories. I might make a video about the whole idea of struggle because I've made old videos saying that fast travel was killing MMOs and group finder was killing MMOs and this is killing MMOs. What I think it is struggle creates lasting bonds. However, struggle also vastly reduces the amount of people who want to play because no one wants to struggle. So nobody wants to struggle, but everyone wants the emotional richness that's given by enduring and succeeding at that struggle. I still feel better getting my first mount in WoW Classic than I did being given it in whatever WoW is calling its live version now. I still feel better getting the Lucid Nightmare than I did getting anything else, because the struggle to get the Lucid Nightmare for me was ridiculous. Struggle to achieve emotional richness, fantastic memories that you can share with each other, but nobody wants to. I mean, there's a famous saying in bodybuilding, everyone wants to be a bodybuilder, nobody wants to lift weights. Yeah. That's the way it goes. Everyone wants, because I see this all the time, especially on Reddit, Everyone wants an MMORPG with a community. People always say, oh, are there any communities that still talk to each other? Are there any games that are still difficult? Are there any MMOs that still require players to connect? And you know what? Yeah, all of them. But you've got to struggle to do it. You've got to send the messages. Everyone wants a rich friendship group, but nobody wants to be messaging 10 to 20 people every day to check up on them, to see how they're doing, giving them a call, checking up. It's difficult. It's effort. And I think as you age, you realise that maintaining friendships is effort. And maintaining MMORPG relationships and clans and guilds and connections...
It needs to be not forced. It needs to be a natural occurrence.
Communication is effort. Maintaining friendships is effort. Talking to new people is effort. And it's that struggle that makes the reward ultimately worth it. And I think the MMORPG is in a paradox of design, where we want to both remove the struggle because it itself is not fun, but we want to keep the emotional richness and reward that enduring the struggle generates. You want to both feel like you've been through great hardship, because that creates such a rich bond, and not go through the great hardship. That's what people want. People really do want all of the depth with none of the actual diving. It's very difficult.
There is a very good real-world situation for this. If you are happy for a very long period of time, you don't realise you're happy. When you've had a shitty week, sprinkled in here and there, you're happier when you're happy. You realise that you're happy. And the same goes for anything you do. You could love a job that you've just got. You've got a dream job that you want to get. As soon as you get it, you realise it doesn't really make you happy. It's made you irrefutably happier than your previous job, but that job has to be there beforehand for you to be happier about the new one.
You need the barometer, don't you? You need that balance.